Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name is Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. If you can't find my website because you're in a country where my website won't load, you can get in contact with me, mary@maryenglish.co.uk. Now this week we're going to cover one chapter in a book called Healing with the Horoscope, a guide to counselling by a lady called Marith Pottenger. She's the daughter of Zipporah Doddins, who Zipporah was a pretty famous astrologer, and she's the daughter to her. And Maritha was born in 1952. I am going to put her chart, Maritha's chart, up on the show notes. I won't put Zipporah's up because you can find that on Astro. She was a very famous astrologer. I haven't read any of Zipporah's work, but I have read and I have a copy of Maritha's book, Healing with the Horoscope. Now it says here, this book is aimed to serve the needs of the helping astrologer, but I hope you won't buy it for the sake of your clients alone. It's my fervent desire that you will use it for yourself in a spirit of very enlightened self-interest. I expect this volume to be intensely valuable in your work with people. In it, I cover relevant research from psychology about what works in helping people, techniques of counselling and communicating with examples and illustrations, and ways to minimise anxieties, fears, inadequacies, and strife. There's a lot of material here to help you become a more efficient healer. Your clients and any people you are with will benefit, but that, valuable as it is not why I hope you'll read this book. Buy it for yourself. So it's quite a big promise on the back of the book, and it is a particularly good book. Now we're only going to cover one chapter, and the reason I'm going to cover it is because it certainly happens a lot when you're working in private practice. So this episode is not so much about astrology, more about what happens in the consulting room. And it's important to consider these things. Now the book itself, obviously I can't read all of it because of copyright. We've got section 1, theory, what is reality, responsibility and will, displacement, repression. Section 2, applications, so negative effects, positive outcomes, projection, displacement, blah blah blah. And then section 3, demonstration and example consultation. She's written an open letter to the reader. Read it for yourself, so don't necessarily read it to benefit your clients. Now I am going to read the whole of this chapter, so we're going from page 55, so it's not millions of pages, 55 to 63. I'll put a link in the show notes for the book itself if you want to get a copy. And this chapter is chapter 7, and it's called Who Me? Projection. One of the greatest tools counsellors have for understanding both themselves and clients is a firm grasp of the defence mechanism, projection. Projection is a subcategory under parataxic distortions, where our needs and fantasies influence our perceptions of other people. The theory of projection is thus: people are prone to fail to recognise certain parts of themselves. We're often ambivalent, feeling both love and hate, attraction and repulsion, etc. Especially in Western society, we tend to be uncomfortable with such opposites. As Guggen Bull Craig puts it, it's not easy for the human psyche to bear the tension of polarities. The ego loves clarity and tries to eradicate inner ambivalence. So we tend to deny one side or another of ourselves. Especially qualities we feel are negative are likely to be pushed into the unconscious, kept out of awareness as much as possible, partially for reasons of self-esteem. Less obvious, and therefore more likely to be missed by the counsellor, is the tendency of some people to focus on their weaknesses and ignore their actualised or potential strengths because they do not support the client's poor me images. Freud felt that such denied feelings or qualities constantly seek to return to the light of awareness through dreams, symptoms and projection. The human self-actualizing drive postulated by Maslow and others would constantly seek to dig up any material we try to bury and keep unconscious. Self-actualization assumes an urge to become all that we're capable of and encompass all our possibilities. In projection, we see our own disowned qualities in someone else. In the original Freudian formulation, we imagined those qualities in the other person. For example, a very stingy individual feels his wife, family and children are all misers, but sees himself as practical or even generous. Outside observers feel the reverse is true. We say that he has projected his stinginess, like a movie projector, and sees it out there in other people rather than recognising it within himself. For most of us, this is more comfortable because we are able to condemn or criticise those projected qualities in others. It would be hard on our self-image to criticise the qualities in ourselves. Most clinicians today feel that there's at least a kernel of truth in almost any given projection, and often more. I and others find that people do not have to imagine qualities in others. Clients are bright enough and intuitive enough to find significant others who will exhibit those qualities the clients need to face. That is, if stinginess is an issue of concern to us, we'll attract or become attracted to a highly stingy or highly generous person in order to work out our own conflict in this area. This includes the client-to-counsellor relationship. Thus, as counsellors, we work on issues relevant not just to our clients, but to ourselves. Guggenball Craig says, such an analyst recognises time and again how patients' difficulties constellate his own problems and vice versa, and therefore openly works not only on the patient but on himself. And he suggests, part of the training of social workers, nurses, teachers, doctors, etc. should emphasise that the problems of the case or the patient are one's own as well. Now, I've been in private practice for a long time, and she's going to talk in a minute about waves of people that come in. And I don't especially have waves of people come in that have the same issue, but I do have waves of people that have similar names or even the same names. I always find that strange. Or I'll meet someone new and then I'll have a wodge of clients all with that same name as well, which is a bit funny. But having been in practice for a long amount of time, you do tend to, can attract the clients that are highlighting for you something that needs to be highlighted in your own life. But we will project that onto the client and but anyway, she goes further. So along these lines, Jung says that no analyst can bring clients further than she or he has gone personally. Kharkov and Berison point out that therapists with lower levels of empathy, respect and other essential qualities in their clients will not be helpful and may do harm. Fritz Perls puts a lot of emphasis on facing projection and re-owning parts of oneself. He once suggested that people start with the assumption that everything they experienced was a projection and go from there. Given that we all filter and interpret reality, this is not as absurd an assumption as it might first appear. The authors of Paradox and Counter-Paradox make a related assumption in their work with families. They act as if every feedback in the family system is an output of the therapist's behaviours. Note that these positions, although extreme, give the counsellor tremendous power. If we're involved in and part of all that goes on, we have the power to affect and change it. Recognising projection gives the counsellor an opportunity to learn and grow from each and every client. As in much of counselling, one's feelings and reactions are one's most valuable tools. Example, a client comes to me and shortly I find him to be amazingly self-centred. I'm appalled by his lack of consideration for others. True, this may very well be an area in which he needs to work in order to improve his interpersonal relationships. However, I do us both a disfavour if I stop after labelling him selfish and inconsiderate. I must now look at myself. Why am I irritated by this man? I have discomfort with his self-centeredness. Therefore, it's a good bet I'm uncomfortable with my own self-centeredness. So I criticise him for what I deny in myself. Having gone that far, perhaps I can meditate on the values of selfishness. Under what circumstances is it useful? When is it good and not bad? And how do those judgments work in his life, not just in mine? Unless I come to understand how selfishness fits for him, our therapeutic relationship is doomed. When a counsellor feels contemptuous or looks down on clients, the clients sense it, and unless they're highly masochistic, will usually break off the relationship. Why pay someone to sit in hard judgment of you? Often, more information will broaden one's perspective. Perhaps I discover this man comes from a large immigrant, poor family and has had to work and fight and push from the beginning just for food. His self-centeredness makes more sense now. A major point is that even though an issue may be very much a problem with a client, it can also be an issue with the counsellor, and vice versa. One does not preclude the other. If a counsellor realises she's been fantasising a lot, misperceiving and exaggerating an issue with a client due to his or her own personal conflicts in that area, it does not automatically mean it is only his or her agenda. The issue may still be significant, although perhaps only mildly so for the client. Else, why did it happen with that particular client? The key issue here is meaning. Our interactions with people have meaning. We do not pick fights out of thin air, have random likes and dislikes. People relate as they do for reasons, albeit, is that how I pronounce it? Somewhat subterranean ones at times. Much of the exchanges between people are not explicit. As Guggenball Craig says, he's struck by how much more transpires in exchange between two people than is ever expressed in word or deed. It behooves us as counsellors to scrutinise our behaviour most intensely when we notice a common pattern in our clients. For example, if I get 3 selfish, self-centred clients in a row, my first question to myself would be, what am I wanting and denying myself because it's too selfish? Perhaps I've been working too hard and want a vacation, but don't want to desert my clients for a week or two. Perhaps I'm immolating myself from the altar of the family, working to keep an immaculate house, bake bread, etc. Perhaps I'm giving in or compromising in friendships or love relationships and feeling resentful and taken advantage of. My next question would be, how am I creating selfishness by my attempt to avoid being selfish? Ironically, our attempts to cut out part of our own nature usually lead in circular fashion to doing exactly what we most want to avoid. So, if I sacrifice myself in a relationship, I will feel more and more resentful. I will get increasingly self-centered as I focus on all my unmet needs and count the various ways in which my lovers/friends are not doing what they ought to for me. Having a strong emotional reaction to a client is a fairly reliable sign that the counsellor has conflicts to work out in that area. Generally, the counsellor would like to do in some mild form what the client is overdoing and carrying to excess, or the counsellor is also experiencing the qualities the client demonstrates but manages to deny that fact until forced to face it by the extreme example of the client. It's as if clients are fun house mirrors who throw back in exaggerated, overblown fashion our own conflicts and ambivalences for us to face and learn and grow. I want to stress that it's not only negative qualities that are projected. People often give away very positive parts of themselves, and good and bad are often in the eye of the beholder as well. Independence can be positive in some arenas and negative in others. I've seen clients deny their own beauty, intelligence, artistic talent, and organisational skills. Instead, they attracted people into their lives who would manifest beauty, intelligence, artistic talent, organisation skills for themselves. Like often does attract like in the world. Successful people hang out with successful people, if they define success similarly. Beautiful people often associate with other beautiful people. Often, however, clients are unaware of their likenesses. They may be denying their own intelligence and recognising it only in those around him. Sometimes I respond to such people, if they're so brilliant and you are so stupid, how is it you understand fully their brilliance? I love that bit. I've never said that to a client, but it's like, okay, that's a good one. It's the mirroring effect in relationships that makes them so valuable. The people around us present us with endless opportunities to know ourselves more thoroughly. They give us wonderful examples of sides of ourselves which we've not come to terms with. They show us what to do and what not to do in dealing with our side of our nature. We only have to pay attention. Projection can be encouraged by culture, family, etc. For example, sex roles encourage the woman with Mars conjunct Uranus to find a man to live out her freedom urges rather than being an independent, assertive, rebellious type herself. Unfortunately, the more she denies her own need for freedom, space and independence, the unhappier she will be. The analogy Zip Dobbins uses is feeding someone else when you are hungry. You keep on feeding them and you get more and more hungry. So it is with projection. Instead of expressing a side of your nature, you're attracted to someone who does it for you. But the more we deny it inside, the more extreme examples we attract from the outside, the hungrier we get. So a woman who denies her needs for independence attracts increasingly unstable, free soul type partners who do not hang around. Thus, she gets the space and independence she yearns for, but through the actions of another. If she's not conscious of those needs for freedom, she'll be terribly unhappy at the instability and infidelity of her relationships. Once she recognises her own need for freedom, she can choose more fulfilling ways to satisfy that need. Okay, so that's the beginning part of this chapter. It's only a small chapter. Don't worry, it's not going to go on forever. We're going to be covering projection in the horoscope in just a sec. But I just wanted to interject to, if you find you're having an enormous problem with someone else, I recommend that you go to the website called thework.com and you download a PDF. I think it's a PDF now, yeah, called the Judge Thy Neighbour Worksheet. This is work by a lady who I've mentioned a number of times, and she's called Byron Katie. And you fill the sheet out and you write in there exactly how you feel about this other person. And then well, you could do it yourself, but she works with the person, and she's not a therapist. She's just a woman who had an aha moment. And she gets you to go through your sheet, and the thing that you're moaning about and are crossest about that is in the other person is part of yourself. And the aha moments that she gets when she works with people, and she makes them stick to the piece of paper. You have to stick to what you're not allowed to elaborate or go into long stories. You have to go to what you've written on your sheet. And it's the most amazing work, and that's why she calls it the work. It is work that she does. And in a sense, the sheet that you're downloading and filling out is a sort of like a projection sheet. This thing that drives me so crazy in this other person is the thing that is within ourselves. Otherwise it wouldn't be driving us crazy, yeah? So equally, when we've got a problem with a parent or a partner, that problem that we've got with them is always a problem in ourselves that the other person is highlighting for us. And if we manage to resolve the problem that's within ourselves, you'd be amazed how the seeming problem that we project onto this other person absolutely lessens. Now, this isn't something that, Maritha is recommending that you do this with clients and you notice it within yourself, but you can also do it with the people that you're in close personal relationships with. The recognition that thing that is driving you absolutely bonkers is something that is within yourself that you might need to acknowledge. Not to say that the partner or the person or the relative or whatever that's doing all these bonkers things that drive you bonkers aren't doing those things. They are, but why are they aggravating you right at this moment in time? What is it that's going on for you? Yeah. And the other thing is that she does point this out in the book, that when you are working with someone, especially as an astrologer, okay, so you are working with people that want to know the answers to something, you can't just dump all the answers on them. It just doesn't work. Oh, well, I think you should do this. It's about helping the client recognise what's in their chart, and can they express what's in their chart in a different way. Yep. Right. So let's go on to the astrology now. Projection in the horoscope. Here, the usefulness of the horoscope is almost unparalleled. I've found over and over again that the chart mirrors the likely projections of the individual. The horoscope pinpoints which qualities might be projected and into which people. Projection is most likely when a horoscope indicates a character heavily weighted in one direction, with a portion fighting to go another direction. For example, a man with a heavy mud, earth and water chart who has Jupiter in Aries in the 7th is likely to find it difficult to integrate the freedom needs of that Jupiter, the restlessness it suggests and the need for excitement it implies, with his strong needs for security, fidelity, predictability and commitment. It's quite likely that he'll project that Jupiter onto a partner and pick someone who's very freedom-loving, extroverted, exciting, dynamic and hard to pin down. The more he denies his own needs to sometimes cut loose, do his own thing, have fun, the more his partner is likely to overdo, be too spontaneous, too into excitement, over-dramatise life, leave on an instant notice. Of course, such a person would be attracted to the earth and water man because he's manifesting the responsibility, security and stability that the fire and air type needs to learn. The most common area of projection is in the 7th and 8th houses. Now, I'm a 7th house person, married to an 8th house person, having given birth to an 8th house person. My first husband, where was his sun sign? I think he had sun in the 7th. Oh, let me just check 1 minute. Yes, first husband had sun in this, still has, he's still alive, obviously. First husband has sun in the 7th. Then I've moved on from the 7th and married to 8th house. Anyway, most common area of projection is in the 7th and 8th houses. Long associated with other people, it's quite easy for the individual to deny that side of his or her character and live it out through others. This can be encouraged by culture, family, sex roles and unwary astrologers. I feel very sad when I hear astrologers talk of placements in the 7th and 8th houses if they had only to do with partners and other people. Everything in our charts is us. Those houses show parts of our own nature which we tend to meet through our own close peer relationships. To talk of the planets there as only applying to partners is to encourage people to give away much of their talent and abilities. It's most difficult to project planets in the 1st and 2nd houses. In the 1st house, people may see configurations as a part of their physical bodies, but deny the connection to their real selves, e.g. the thin soul in a fat body denies responsibility for one's physical being. In the 2nd, people may project qualities into money, possessions, physical objects. Projection is much more likely in subsequent houses. In the 3rd, we can project into neighbours, siblings and other collateral relatives, E.g., a woman with Neptune in the third denied her own creative imagination because she believed, my sister is the artistic one. In the 4th and 10th houses, we can project into parents and other authority figures. This seems to be a particular issue when power is involved. For example, a very full 4th or 10th house with a strong stellium, Leo, Capricorn, Scorpio, might indicate a dominating, very powerful parent, overwhelming to the child who never gets in touch with his or her own power. The parent may be seen as negative, and thus power is defined as negative. I'll never be dominating like Dad. So instead, the child stays passive and is a pushover even as an adult. Or the parent may be seen very positively, but the child feels, I'll never be as strong, competent, successful, capable as Mom or Dad, and so never tries. I must confess, however, that power is a strong issue in my chart, so perhaps I just attract those clients as mirrors for my own issues. Now, I don't know what house system Maritha uses, but she does have a stellium in the 11th, and it is pretty packed, her 11th house. But I expect she probably uses the Placidus system. She hasn't actually got any actual charts in the book, and she doesn't mention what house system it is. But anyway, moving on. In the 5th house, we're prone to giving away parts of ourselves to lovers and children. In our culture, especially, women are often encouraged to live some of their unfulfilled sides out through their children, a scenario uncomfortable and unhealthy for everyone involved. A good example of this was supplied by a woman with a chart full of Capricorn, Cancer and Virgo, and their houses. She also had Uranus in Aries in the 5th house, which was square her Capricorn placements, square her Cancer placements, and in conflicting aspects to other planets in the chart. She was strongly identified with the proper side of her chart: duty, responsibility, doing the right thing. She had 2 daughters who were total rebels. They were free souls, thumbing their noses at the world, refusing to obey the rules, and pretty much running wild. These daughters were doing all the independent, individualistic, freedom-loving, irresponsible things that Mother's Uranian side would have liked to do. The mother, identifying only with her Capricorn, Cancer and Virgo, saw this behaviour as disgraceful. The more she denied her free and rebellious side, the more she overdid her stable, responsible, following the rules side. Her daughters were wonderful, exaggerated mirrors of what she needed to face and find a positive channel for in her life. It was not that she should do what they were doing. They were overdoing the Uranus in Aries energy. She needed to learn to express that side of her nature in moderation. Of course, there was a lesson for the daughters as well. The mother was mirroring to them the need for some stability, concern for society and its rules and regulations, etc. She was overdoing that, and they were underdoing it. In family systems, it's misleading to say one behaviour caused another. They're interlinked. Her excessive responsibility encouraged their excessive rebellion, but their extreme rebellion encouraged her extreme responsibility. It was a typical vicious circle. But note, any of them could have broken the cycle by changing her behaviour. If one individual changes, the system is altered and others will adapt or find a new system, unless they can coerce the person who's changing into back the way she was, which is usually the first strategy tried in a family system. The mirror was there for all of them to learn from. They only had to pay attention. In the 6th house, we may project into colleagues and co-workers. The 7th and 8th, as mentioned, are easy. We project here especially into partners, business, marriage, living together and close friends. 7th house relationships also include client and counsellor. In therapy, in the law, in astrology, and competitive relationships up to and including warfare. The focus in the 8th house is on sharing the material, sensual, sexual world in a close relationship. Thus, business and marital partners can also fall into this house, or anyone with whom we face issues of giving, receiving and sharing possessions and pleasures. In the 9th house, we may give away abilities or qualities to God, or our own version of the truth and meaning in life. The 10th includes at least one parent and other authority figures, boss, president, police officers and so on. In the 11th, we can project onto friends or groups or causes, and in the 12th, we see it all as secret enemies of our own unconscious. Blaming the unconscious is still projection if we separate ourselves from it and avoid personal responsibility. Yalom gives an amusing example of the therapist who responded to such a denial by a client with, "Whose unconscious is it?" Repeated patterns. One of the other fascinating phenomena revealed in the chart is the cyclical nature of our projections. That is, as long as we're not dealing with an important part of our nature, we will continue to attract people in our lives who will manifest it for us, often in an overblown, exaggerated, uncomfortable fashion. An example, and I have got this chart, would be the woman with a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Leo in the 7th house. She first faced the power issue with her father, Saturn conjunct Pluto, Scorpio mid-heaven. He was dominating and controlling, and she was unhappy in the relationship. She avoided marriage for fear, which Saturn can also be a key to, of being dominated and controlled by another man. Her perceptual set was such to notice when men were dominating, controlling, or punitive. She tended to not notice or not be attracted to men who were gentle. She continued to seek out, presumably unconsciously, men who were strong and controlling. As long as she denied her own strength, she felt threatened in such relationships. The goal, of course, was for her to recognize her own strength and needs for power and control. Once she could integrate her own capabilities to take over and take charge positively in her life, e.g. competitive sports, the business world, fighting for causes, she could be comfortable in her interpersonal relationships. She could find other kinds of men to relate to, rather than drawing in men who expressed in an extreme fashion the controlling side of her own nature, which she denied. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the 7th showed the potential danger of picking powerful, perhaps dominating partners. Remember, none of this is inevitable. We're talking about potentials in a chart. Some people with similar combinations, more in touch with their power, just fight all the time with their partners about who is going to be in control. Integration means being able to take turns, each partner taking charge and responsibility in his or her areas of strength, each partner able to gracefully comply as well as take over. The Saturn also indicated that unfinished business in the relationship to father might need to be faced again in relationships with partners, and faced until we finally learn. Psychology calls this face painting, and I mentioned an early example of a woman who was meeting her mother in a sense through her son. Thus, we can use the horoscope as an extremely valuable map of possible projections, both for clients and for ourselves. We can strive to be aware of the qualities we are most likely to project and be on the lookout. Astrologers mentioned to me that they often will get clients in waves or cycles. The patterns are important. If I get a succession of poor little me Piscean victims, I need to look at my yearnings to play omniscient saviour and find where I'm feeling victimised in my life. If I get a succession of Piscean artists, perhaps I'm feeling a lack of beauty in my life. If I assume that everything I notice about clients has some meaning, even if very small, for me as well, I'll be a more effective counsellor and a growing, changing person. Now, the chart that I'm putting in the show notes that demonstrates what she talks about Pluto, Saturn conjunct in the 7th. I mean, I just searched for those. This isn't a chart that Maritha has provided, because there's no charts actually in the book. but I searched for what she said was in the chart, which is a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And since Maritha herself was born in 1952, and this book was written in 1982, and the second printing in November 83 and the third printing in 91. I've got the 91 edition. I thought, well, maybe the person's just that little bit older than us. So we got here somebody 1st of November 1946. And this person is Mensa. So they've got like loads and loads of brains. But it shows the Pluto-Saturn conjunction in the 7th and the midheaven in Scorpio. In this particular chart, the ascendant is 0 degrees Aquarius, with the moon in Aquarius right slap bang on the ascendant. And the client, or this person, sorry, it's not a client, this person that's on Astro Databank is Sun conjunct Jupiter, which is in the 10th. And the sun and the moon are square to each other. But, you know, she's talking about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. You know, is there a different way that she can manifest it? And I don't know, because it doesn't give us on astro.com the name of this person. All we know is that they're a Mensa person. One wonders, did they get married? You know, what might have sort of stopped them from marrying and stuff. But, hate that word. However, when you are working with people, that's why supervision is really important, which I do offer astro counselling. So if you're working with a client that's pushing all your buttons and stuff, then or if stuff's coming up for yourself and you want to be able to chat it through with somebody who also speaks astrology, then obviously get in contact. The details are on my website as well. But it is important to be self-reflective. I absolutely agree with that. And also to look at what you might be attracting. You know, what types of clients are coming for you at the moment. What are they, inverted commas, suffering from? I mean, and I'm not in retirement. I am retirement age now, and I'm getting on a bit, which does make me think about other older astrologers. And you get to a certain age. When I got to my 50s, like everybody was like dying left, right, and centre. I got to my 60s, and the same thing sort of happened. And I'm 66 now, and I'll be getting on for 70, and people don't last forever. So you have to I have to consider for myself in my private practice, how long do I want to continue? But as long as I'm still enjoying it, which I am, I will continue to work. But I think this book is a useful book because it's written by an astrologer for astrologers. It's not a book specifically about how to become a counsellor, and all I have is a counselling skills diploma. So I'm not a counsellor, but I have counselling skills, so I know how to, you know, and I learned about all these things in the counselling skills course that I did, and it is so useful. Liz Green continuously says that if you're going to work in private practice with people, you do need some training of some description to be empathic and be a useful astrologer, rather than one that is going to crash and burn and give bad advice to clients. And this is a quite an extensive book. I mean, she covers quite a lot in it, and there isn't an awful lot of it that's sort of gone out of fashion. Sometimes you can read an older book and think, well, that doesn't apply anymore. The internet wasn't an enormous thing at this point, so. But the things that she discusses in there are definitely relevant. So if you want to get a copy, I recommend it if you want to, you know, expand your practice a bit and be able to make it easier, because she says she's written this book for you. It's not for the client, but trust me, your clients are going to benefit considerably by you reading it. And also, as I say, if you yourself are going through a problem at the moment, whiz over to thework.com and Byron Katie and find the Judge Thy Neighbour worksheet. It tells you how to complete it. There's millions and millions, literally millions, thousands, I'm exaggerating, hundreds of videos of Byron Katie working with people, going through their Judge Thy Neighbour worksheets, because the issue that you see in someone else, or that thing that is driving you absolutely bonkers, is something that you need to stop putting it all on the other person and start to ask yourself, what is it? What are my needs at the moment? Because you're not the person that's driving you crazy. You're not going to be able to change them. They are the way they are, and that is why they're driving you crazy. And the same thing happens with children. Our children can poke and push us buttons, and our pets can as well. Anybody that's got a pet, your pet will, not all the time, but could quite occasionally do the thing that drives you bonkers. So what is it about? What is the pet doing that you need to be able to resolve in yourself? I think this is a wonderful book. I recommend every astrologer reads it. So we are now into spring. We've already had the first day of Aries. We're coming up soon to Uranus coming out of retrograde. Oh, no, sorry, out of retrograde, but into Gemini. And there are things in the pipeline that will be happening. And it's just nice to be able to chat with you and to work directly with you. And I hope you are fab. And if you've got any questions, email me, mary@maryenglish.co.uk. And I'll speak to you next week. Bye-bye now.